His friend Cornelius Tacitus. I often agree with a certain man of learning and experience, who in foreign speeches approves of nothing so much as brevity. I grant that we must observe it if the case allows. Otherwise, to pass over essential points is a betrayal of one's trust, as also is hasty and brief mention of issues which should be ram home, implanted and repeated. The topics of, for the most part, gain additional impact and weight with fuller discussion. A speech is to the mind what as word is to the body. Its effect is achieved as much by holding back as by trusting. At this point, my friend deploys authorities against me, pointing out to me from among the Greeks the speeches of Lysias and those of the Gracchi and of Cato from our Latin tradition, and it is true that very many of these are prudent and concise. I counter with Demosthenes, Aeschines, Hyperides, and many others against Lysias, and with Pollio, Caesar, Caelius, and above all Cicero against the Gracchi and Cato. Cicero's longest speech is said to be the best. In fact, like other good things, the longer a good book is, the better it is. You observe how, in the case of statues, emblems, pictures, and finally dimensions of human figures, many animals, and also trees, it is the size more than anything which gains favor, so long as these are well executed. The same holds good for speeches. Length, in fact, lends a sort of authority and beauty to the volumes themselves. These arguments and many others which I often present to express the same viewpoint, my friend sidesteps, for he is hard to pin down and is slippery in argument. So he goes on to claim that the very advocates on whose speeches I really delivered speeches shorter than the published versions. I take the opposite view, which is supported by the witness of many speeches by many spokesmen, including the pro Murena and the pro Vareno of Cicero, in which the accusations, brief and adorned, are depicted solely by the headings of the various charges. This make it clear that Cicero made numerous statements that he left out when the speeches were published. Cicero also says that in defense of Cluentius he followed the old procedure and conducted the entire case alone, and further that in defense of Gaius Cornelius his speeches lasted 4 days. This removes all possible doubt that the speeches which he delivered more extensively as was essential over several days, he later cut back and pruned, and thus abridged them in one admittedly large but none-the-less single volume. It may be claimed that a well-delivered speech is one thing and the published version another. I note that quite a few hold this view, but my belief, I could be wrong, is that while a speech well delivered may not be good when published, a good published version must have been good when delivered, for the published version is the copy and its well archetype of verbal version. For this reason, we find in all the best speeches called spontaneous, spontaneous periods of speech, even in those which were merely published with, without having been delivered. For example, in the speech against Varus, the sculptor, who was he? Who was the chap? Oh yes, you do well to remind me. They said it was Polycilitus. So that this shows is that the delivered version is that which is fully developed and is close as possible to the written version, so long as the speaker is accorded the appropriate and due time. If this is refused him, the fault is in no way his, but a serious lapse on the part of the judge. The laws support this belief of mine, for they provide abundant time and they cause speakers to be expansive, in other words, to be conscientious rather than brief, for brevity cannot be conscientious except in the most limited cases. My further observation is what experience that outstanding teacher has taught me. I have often pleaded, I have often been a judge, and often an assessor. Different approaches influence different people, and often minor considerations lead to momentous outcomes. Men's judgments differ, and so do their inclinations, so that people listening to the same case at the same time often react differently, and sometimes identically but from different impulses. Moreover, even individual inclines to his own insight and accepts as the strongest argument the statement of another which tallied with his own prior view. So all must be fed some observation which they can grasp and acknowledge. Regulus on one occasion remarked to me, when we were pleaded in court together, you think that you must follow too if we issue in a case. I set my fike I see my fox at once on the jugular and press home my attack here. True, he pressed home the issue which he has selected, but his choice is often ori. My retort was that his my retort was that his idea of where the jugular was could be the knee of the heel. Since I cannot identify the jugular, I said, I investigate and try every approach. In fact, genie laissez virer. It is like working on the land. I tend and cultivate not the just vines, but also the fruit bushes, and not just the bushes, but also the fields. In those fields, I sow not only grain and wheat, but also barley, beans, and other vegetables. So too, in composing a speech, I scatter arguments like seeds over a wider area, so that I can gather up the issues which emerge. This is because the thoughts of judges are no less hard to fathom, and just as uncertain and decisive are the hazards of wild weather and the soil. I always keep in mind the praise levies on that understanding orator Pericles by the comic poet Police, besides the rapid movement of his thought. Persuasion of a kind sat on his lips. Thus he beguiled. Yet of all orators, alone he left his sting upon men's ears. But neither that persuasion nor that beguiling could have been attained by the great Pericles himself by brevity or rapidity, or both, for they are different qualities without his supreme ability. Pleasing and persuading people demand fluency of speech and leisurely timing. Leaving a sting in the minds of listeners can be achieved only by one who implants in rather than bestows a pinprick. A pen to his what a second comic poet said also about Pericles, his lightning and his thunder shattered Greece. His is no pun or a lob of utterance, but one which is both high surrounding and sublime, with, with thunder and lightning, which in short confounds the entire world. Yet the mean is best. Who denies it? But the man who falls short fails to keep the mean as much as he who overshoots, the spokesman who is too terse as much as he who is too diffuse. So you often hear the comment meager and lacking body as much as undisciplined and repetitive. The second is said to have gone beyond the subject matter, the first not to have covered it, but both are equally guilty, the one too feebleness and the other too virility. The second fault admittedly has the great lack of polish, but the greater talent. In saying this, I am not approving the character whom Homer describes as as prolix, as prolixy, but rather the one who uttered words which fall like snowflakes in the winter time. Nor that I fail to regard with the greatest approval the one who speaks few words but with the utmost clarity. But if given the choice, I opt for an utterance like the winter snows, that which is copious and continuous, but also abundant, in sort ways godlike and heavenly. But many people short speech through the slogans, and it's nonsense to regard the indolent frivolous as informed judgment. Indeed, if one were to take the advice, it will be better not just to speak briefly, but not to speak at all. This is my opinion as yet, but I shall change. But I shall change it if you disagree. Though I beg you to explain clearly why do you do. For though I ought to yield to your authority, I think it better on this important topic to be prevailed upon by reason rather than by authority. Accordingly, if I seem to be on the right track, write to tell me so in as brief the amusing as you like, but do write, for you will be bolstering me by bolstering my judgment. If I am mistaken, compose a letter of the greatest length. It's certainly not bribery on my part to have required the need for a short letter from you if you agree with me, but for an extended one if you disagree. Farewell.